Okay, let's try this again. Right. Can I be heard? If you can hear me, if you've somehow found your way to this chat, please let me know. Um, yeah, for reference. Yes, brilliant. It's all fine. Okay, other people will to go. Yeah, so I'm currently hotspotting from my phone because my internet is terrible. I have had a whale of a time trying to get them sorted. After my neighbor, very unfortunately, we got new neighbors and they were applying for internet from Virgin Media and put the wrong house number on their internet um, application, which essentially Virgin Media went, "Oh, the people at my house had moved, so we'll just turn off their internet account." And it took me 3 days to get my internet back. And the customer service I generally got was appalling. So, long story short, next week I'm switching to TalkTalk, which has got a better download speed and a better upload speed. Plus, they'll put a router in my actual office rather than on the other side of the house because that's where the link is. Because they'll give us two routers. So going forward, my internet should be a lot better, but I am getting quite concerned that it's always at this time every single year that my internet fails and then it tries to cancel my live streams. So yeah, I'm very sorry. Hi, Courtney. Thank you. I'm so glad people are appearing because this is getting really annoying for me. So yeah, the internet sucks. I'm getting better internet. Oh, no, what was I going on about? I think I was going on about Star Wars Galaxy Edge, which is the place I want to go to because I'm a Star Wars obsessive, as you all know. Let me know if you guys want to go to Star Wars Galaxy Edge World because I'm happy to talk about it all day long. But yeah, they had yeah. So what? Oh, hi, Michaela. So yeah, Star Wars Galactic Star Cruise came out, and loads of people reviewing it, and loads of people sort of on Reddit and stuff were like, "What on earth is this thing? Why on earth would we go and pay to play pretend in a hotel and like pretend we're in Star Wars?" And you could tell the LARPer community were united on this front because we were all like, "Why wouldn't you pay to go and be in Star Wars for a weekend?" Albeit $5,000 was a lot of money, and I've still not been able to raise it for obvious reasons. Not to mention that I don't live in the US, so flights would have been a killer. But it did sort of make me think about the levels of professionalism because that's the one thing that is amazing about Disney is that when Disney decides that they want to do a thing, they will do it on like the nth degree. So instead of like plonking a load of like people out in the woods and saying go off, be Jedi, it's like, right, we're going to build you an entire Star Cruiser. We're going to set up all these systems so essentially you can have a space battle. We're going to hire actors to play like Chewbacca and like Kylo Ren, and we're going to have like full on lightsaber fights, and people can like spy for the First Order, or steals things for the Resistance. I don't know what the storyline is of Galactic Star Cruiser. I've purposely not looked it up, but I've watched a lot of trailers and a lot of reviews. So that seems to be sort of the gist. And yeah, they went to the nth degree in it all. And it's almost like, while we don't expect to live up to that because we do not have the budget of Disney, professionalism is becoming more and more a thing when it comes to LARPs. And because of that, we're pushing our boundaries and pushing our standards higher. And I think that is changing the landscape of what LARP actually is. Sorry. I think that is changing the landscape of what LARP actually is. And what do we do with that, really? Because, we're utilizing more technology with our LARP. We're holding a higher standards of costumes, of set design. We're holding higher standards of professionalism. Lord of the Rings hiking LARPs. Yes, that's another thing as well. Those have started popping up around the globe as well. And Yeah, there's a lot of generalized sort of professionalism out there now. And I just start to wonder that are we going to see small hobby like LARPs almost disappear? Not that people won't like run a smaller LARP, but that whole idea of like, getting together with a bunch of mates from like, school or your university or just some locals and going into a park with a bunch of, boffer weapons. Are we going to see less of those because the general expectation when people hear LARP is going to be something much more professional? And I don't touch on it much in my Hawkeye video, but I think Hawkeye is an excellent example of this because um one thing I noticed when Hawkeye, the TV series, came out and there were LARPers in it, the first thing I noticed is that there were not as many people questioning as to what LARP was. Um, the concept of LARP was generally understood, but not necessarily like it wasn't like everyone was like, "Yeah, let's all go LARPing," but people understood it, which really straight made it interesting for me just because when I first started getting out into work once I left school, people definitely didn't know what LARP was, and I had to explain my hobby, which led to some rather interesting conversations. I actually got asked by one of my superiors if it was something sexual. Um, at which point I had about 30 people leap on me, but begging me not to report it as some form of sexual harassment. Um, which to this day still weird, but it was the fact that it wasn't really sort of understood as to what I meant when I said live action role play. But when Hawkeye came along, a load of people sort of didn't even ask. Hi, Papa Palpatine. You've missed my internet betraying me. That's what you've missed, which is why we're on a second stream. If you're curious, you didn't miss too much. You mostly me rambling about rambling about the future of LARP, Sonia's adventures ending, and Empire LARP getting big, and how the pandemic has kind of affected LARP. Um, I think, yeah, Michaela, I think hobby LARPs will survive essentially because you're right. The big professional LARPs are often really expensive, but yeah, Sonia's adventure ended. We'll come back to that though. Um, how much? How many more? Are we going to see more of them? That's the thing. Usually, we see lots of hobby LARPs going to. I'm going to LARPCon in a couple of weeks, where they will advertise all sorts of LARPs, and I'm really looking forward to that. But they are all sort of getting more professional, more detailed, and more interesting. And it feels like it always sounds really silly. It feels like almost all of them have to have a gimmick of some kind now. I often go on about Tank LARP because Tank LARP I think is one of the most fun things I've ever heard. Yep, LARPCon is a thing here in the UK. It's held in a little town called Colville in the wonderful county of Leicestershire, which is not too far from where I live. I'm in glorious Nottinghamshire, home of Robin Hood. Um, don't look too far into that when I start going on about LARP archery. Uh, but yeah, so are smaller hobby LARPs really still going to be a thing in that they're still the most, popular LARP, or are we going to see more of these larger professional LARPs? And the answer is I honestly don't know because I think people's idea of what LARP should be, especially new people coming into LARP, is a lot higher than what we all thought it was going to be 10 years ago when we all got into it. I mean, when I got into it, it was all like, slightly goofy costumes, do some role play, and it will be, it's a bit of a laugh. But now I feel like these people come in kind of expecting the big dramatic battle scenes and with sound effects and special effects and you know, wizard school kind of LARPs with lots of special effects as well, and things like that. And yes, they do cost an arm and a leg, but people are willing to pay it. So are those kind of LARPs going to end up killing off the smaller sort of hobby style LARPs? And I hope not, because that's kind of the foundation of where this, hobby began, is the smaller sort of people going off into the woods with, like, 10 mates and, hitting each other with big foam sticks. But it's just the fact that because it is becoming so professional, are we going to generally keep seeing those happening? I don't know. It's an interesting sort of thing to consider, because because we're seeing loads of things like this as well. I mean, Evermore Parks in Utah in the US is another one that people like to go on about, because it's a immersive, you know, not theme parks. It doesn't. I don't think it has rides or anything, but you go there and you kind of act through a story in the same way you would a LARP, but it's all kind of professional. I have to say Utah, USA, just because for some reason, yeah, everything's cinema sins, and they always go as opposed to Utah somewhere else. It turns out there's a Utah in New South Wales in Australia, and now every time I say Utah, USA, Utah, I have to say Utah, USA, otherwise my brain just goes Utah, New South Wales. Um, I may I'm maybe more neurodiverse than I think I am. I keep waiting for my doctor to get my referral through. It's taking years. Anyway, like I was saying, I don't want small hobby LARPs to die off, and I definitely don't think they should. I think it's just because they're being held to a higher standard by player bases. Um, I just don't think it's going to look quite the same as it did before, or I don't think it's going to look the same as it does now. Um, Evolution of everything seems to be quite rapid, and people like to keep pushing themselves further. For instance, there's a LARP in the UK called Orion Sphere, which I don't go to, but it is on my list because it's a family-friendly LARP, which means I can take my son, and it's a sci-fi LARP, which I don't do many of, so I'm quite interested. But what they have in Orion Sphere, which is one of their big selling points, is they have a spaceship simulator, which sounds more fancy than I think it technically is. It's essentially they take over one of like the cabins on the site. They set up all these computers, so essentially they put you and your crew through a simulation where one of you, I think, is the pilot, someone's like, the engineer or something like this. And essentially, to get through your simulation, you all have to kind of do your jobs. There used to be like, school trips to places that did this as a child, or rides for you to do this. In fact, I think there's something at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. I think like the Millennium Falcon ride does this. And it's really impressive that they've built this themselves and they've put it on a bunch of laptops. And it's now the selling point of this LARP is that you can go and you do your LARP, but as part of it, you can go off and essentially fly a starship. And that kind of thing seems to be becoming more common. Not necessarily that you fly a starship, but that everything's kind of either got a gimmick and it's sort of based on some form of new developed technology we have to increase the immersion that people want. And it's just really interesting to see how LARP is pushing forward. And yes, exactly like that, Harry. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what this simulator is. Essentially, yeah, while someone's doing like the pilot role, someone's controlling something else. And essentially, you have to all work together to control the spaceship. That's exactly what it's like. And yeah, I'm sorry. I know this is kind of rambly and it's been going on, but it's just been something that's been going on in my head because I don't know how I'm going to process that in terms of fantasy LARP, because that's the genre I play the most. And I don't know how it's necessarily going to change that. And it reminds me of a conversation I had with a friend of mine a few years ago, um, where we were talking about the anime Sword Art Online, which is getting old now. And my friend turned to me and my husband and said, if if they could do something like Sword Art Online, where you put a helmet on and essentially you deep dive into a game and you can essentially live out the game in a virtual world, would you do that instead of LARP? And my first instinct was no, because that's not, I don't go to LARP for that kind of immersion. I go to LARP to be social and to, experience it in person. I don't go there necessarily because of like realism. But then we're watching LARPs become more like that. Not in that they become, we're entering a digital world in them, but in that immersion is the highest sort of achievement some LARPs aim for. Like literally, people think that they should aspire to immersion over everything else. And immersion costs money. And therefore, LARPs are, it's kind of like a snowball effect. LARPs want to become more professional so that they can earn more money, so that they can enhance the immersion. And that keeps going because in order to get that immersion, you need to be more professional so that you can essentially keep get more money so you can increase the immersion. And it just keeps going. And we're at a point now where some LARPs are so immersive, it's literally their selling point. And that's the only place where I think sort of, smaller LARPs can sort of hold their own, is that they don't prioritize the immersion because they don't need to. It's essentially, I'm going for. I don't necessarily mean Empire. I love Empire. I enjoyed it very much, but I mean a lot of LARPs in general. Um, like Bothwell School of Wizardry, I know is another one. Their immersion is quite impressive because they have a lot of special effects, a lot of rule sets to sort of keep that. Empire is definitely one of them for in terms of immersion because they do aspire to it and their play base aspires to it, and I admire that greatly. But as but basically, what I'm trying to say is that the more LARPs want to become immersive, the more professional they are becoming as a response. And it's almost like we're being forced into the development of professional LARP purely to get the effect we want, which is resulting in some people being priced out because LARP is an expensive hobby as it is. And cost of living is obviously a problem here in the UK at the very least. And it's cost of living is a problem everywhere else as well. But trust me, here in the UK, we're really doing really awfully. And I think it's just an interesting sort of way LARP's going to be, in that we're going to watch LARP get more expensive as people aim for higher immersion. So, yeah, I don't know. It's something that I think even people like me and other sort of LARP social media creators sort of keep pushing towards the because we look because I know that we all can depict sometimes quite an immersive thing. If you go onto like Instagram or onto YouTube, and you can watch these great videos or see these great images of LARPers in costume in the woods, and it is the most immersive thing possible. Those costumes either cost a lot or took a lot of time and money to create. And we kind of prioritize immersion above everything else in some ways. And is that going to end up costing people out? Is that going to end up, forcing us into these levels of professionalism? What do you guys think? I don't know. I'm just sort of rambling. I'm now looking about a LARP that has an island with dinosaurs, and I think that sounds amazing. But yeah, no, there better been dinosaurs. Like you make, do you know what you're making? You're making me pitch like the mechanical dinosaurs from like Jurassic World and stuff like that. There was an exhibition down in London recently with all of the props, and I know that's not what it was like, Michaela, but I really hope it was. Um, this is my problem. I lose all train of thought. Um, but yeah, for those of you who arrived late, this entire crazy train of thought um, started for me when Sonia Adventures announced that they were shutting down their channel, which has devastated me because Sonia has been one of my biggest inspirations for LARP. I've always gone to her channel when I've needed advice, and to her Instagram when I've needed inspiration for gorgeous costumes, which I have still yet to achieve. I don't know if I ever will achieve her standard, um, because she's just generally awesome. Like seriously, like I could say I will sing Sonia's praise forever. I think she's generally one of the most awesome people with this awesome aesthetic and this awesome outlook on life. And the fact that she and her team have shut down their channel, despite the fact that I know it's for her and because she wants to do something new, and think that's wonderful, and I wish her all the best. I'm still devastated. Um, if you've not watched her video, I've said this earlier. If you've not watched her goodbye video, do, because I'm in it. Don't go watch it for me, but I am in it in case anyone's actually curious. Yeah, Sonia shutting down her channel spawned this whole thing because I started getting a bit existential about what's LARP going to be like without Sonia, and I went too deep down the rabbit hole. So that's where we are now. Yeah, keeps going there. I'm gonna have a quick drink. I'm very sorry. Mm. Do you guys think that immersion is the thing that we all should really aspire to in LARP? Sorry, juice sitting on my lip. Do you guys think that's what everyone should really be aspiring to? Because I'm not 100% sure. The intake we have of fantasy media has increased exponentially over the last few years, with things like The Witcher on Netflix, Rings of Power, even things like The Legend of Vox Machina, which had its season finale today, which I'm devastated for because I always need more episodes. I'm so glad they've got a third season that they're doing the Mighty Nine series. I'm so happy. But the level of fantasy stuff that we are generally exposed to at the moment is really high because it's an incredibly popular genre. And it does make me sort of wonder what kind of standards are we now holding ourselves to? Because we essentially will have this version of escapism, which again that we all kind of want, which I think also comes partially down to the pandemic as well, because what we learned during the pandemic is our world is a bit shit, and we all want to escape it. And as things keep going sideways with things like Ukraine and everything else like that, I feel like people do want that escapism, and that's why fantasy is so prevalent in media. But I sometimes feel that people think immersion is the most important thing when it comes to art because they want that escapism so much. And yeah, I agree with you, Harry. I think that the fun behind LARP is really, really important. But at the same time, are people getting a lot of fun from that immersion in that they can just shut off and pretend that they are somewhere else entirely for a year? There's no, you know, distractions. They can turn their mobile phones off. And essentially disappear into a fantasy world for a few days. Mm, yeah, that's the point I was bringing up earlier. Is it Mylar? That's an amazing name. Because if immersion is the key point, we are going to see people getting priced out. of LARP because the level of high energy, like blockbuster events are expensive. They're extremely expensive. There's at least one blockbuster LARP over here that I would love to go to, but the ticket for one weekend is more than I spend on a festival LARP for all four events, which are 4 days long. So I can either get a 3-day weekend event, which is incredibly high immersion and very, has everything included, accommodation, food, everything, for one weekend, or I can spend maybe two-thirds of that and get 4 4-day weekend events at a different game. But albeit it doesn't have the levels of immersion, it doesn't have bedding and food provided for me. But what does that mean the expectations of the public are going to have? Are people going to be expecting these high immersion blockbuster style LARPs? And is that going to result in the smaller LARPs getting priced out? And truth is, maybe. That is a possibility. I hope it's not. But it's kind of a weird one. And this is what I'm sort of mean when I'm talking about the future of LARP. It's really interesting to sort of see how things are changing and how attitudes towards the game is changing and what people want from the game has changed as well. Yeah, so what can we really do to sort of ensure that people don't get priced out? I think on the upside, as people develop anything, inevitably things will eventually become cheaper because people will work out how to do things in a more cheap way while still maintaining quality, because that's the nature of life essentially, is that human beings are incredibly lazy creatures who want to get the most out of the least amount of money. I think, well, that's the thing though, Michaela. You can say, like, if we keep the standards down, but do people really want to keep the standards down? I think it's good to have at least high standards. It's just whether we can afford to have high standards is a whole other thing. Yeah, I agree, Matt. LARP is indeed an expensive hobby, especially when you're getting started. I think there's an expectation to have a greater costume off the bat, to have the weapon of your dream straight off the bat, to have an in-character tent, to go to a LARP that has a lot of special effects or high expectations of what the game should be. And that does price people out because people look at some LARPs and go, that's too expensive for me to play. I'll save for it or I just won't bother. That's a good point, Harry. And we'll talk about rules and accessibility in a minute, because that's a point I want to sort of go into as well. So I remember seeing a debate a while back about whether it's okay to price people out of LARP, and I don't entirely know on that one, because on the one point we want to have a very inclusive and very wide bearing. We want to have it. We all agree that we want to have a very inclusive and a very wide community. We want as many people to come and join us as much as possible. But if people keep insisting on these high immersion, professional style LARPs, we are going to see people priced out. And that means we are kind of sort of not shunning people, but it does mean that people who, for whatever reason, have a lower income or less disposable income just might not be able to afford to play. So maybe what we actually need is not like, almost sounds like charity. It's not charity because I don't think that's a justifiable way of what I'm trying to say. But I think we need to have a way of including as many people as possible financially while still maintaining high standards. It's the best compromise I can think of, and yet I'm incredibly aware that's an incredibly utopian solution because it makes no sense, um, and has a billion ways that either that it's flawed or can be taken advantage of by people. But I'm a naive human being, as you all well know. So yeah, standards for LARP are a big one because rules and accessibility can vary between games as well. And that does make things a bit tricky. I mean, some games have like large rule books and stuff like that, but that's generally for mechanic heavy LARPs as well. And mechanic heavy LARPs I often find are kind of expensive, but I don't know. That kind of depends. I'm not sure. It's really interesting. It is really interesting to sort of see the chat right now. I will admit, just because we all have very different experiences of the games that we've all played, and we've all got. And I think it's quite interesting to see the different priorities everyone has when it comes to the LARPs that they go to. Um, Yeah, sorry, I'm just reading through all of your comments. It's great, and just reading about like scholarship tickets for Blockbuster LARPs and people donating to lower the cost of other people's tickets, which I think is really, really good and interesting scheme. It does make things more accessible to people like students or people on low income or benefits. And I think that's really, really, really helpful. But can we do that for everybody though? Because in a cost of living crisis, a lot of people are losing a lot of disposable income. I mean, I know I'm certainly one of them. Um, Fortunately, I am very lucky, and I'm in a profession where I can stay very stable, and I do still have some disposables, which means I can afford to LARP. But at the same time, I'm feeling the squeeze, and people who are not as fortunate as me are feeling it even more than me. And that is resulting in some people not being able to LARP this year because they can't afford it. And are we helping that by having the LARP industry, because it is an industry? We I think we're at a point where we almost need to stop referring to it as a hobby. It's an interest. It's now becoming an industry because of the amount of professionalism and the amount of inclusion that people do expect. So, are we seeing the development of the LARP industry essentially starting to price people out in a cost of living crisis? And the answer is probably. So, as a community, we probably need to try and mitigate that as much as possible. It's an awful lot to think about, isn't it? We've gotten somewhere very deep and it all spawns off Sonia staffing her channel. We'll just blame Sonia for this conversation if anyone asks. It's like it's all Sonia's fault. She shouldn't have quit. Um, I miss her so much already. She's only been gone 24 hours. Yeah, people are taking to staffing LARPs to lower costs. Charity tickets are very helpful. I know that people are looking at thrifting more costumes, making all of their costumes. And yeah, the cost of LARP is very different than what it was just a few years ago. Oh, that being said, I am LARPing more this year than I did last year for some bizarre reason. or at least I'm trying to. I think it's because it sounds very silly. I stepped down from staffing a LARP last year and suddenly became more keen for the hobby. Um, but I felt the pinch of that, to be honest, because you know travel for LARPs adds money in as well. And while some of my LARPs are quite close to where I live, some of them are far. I really had to budget to go to Glasgow back in October for the Fable LARP that I went to. Which, if you've not watched that, that video is on my channel. Do go have a look. I did get some footage of the event, so do go have a look because it was a really, really good night. Um, well, good for you, Harry. My parents can't drop me places. I'm a grown up, apparently, according to them. Um, can't say anything. I think my dad watches these. Yeah, it's interesting to sort of see where LARP's going to be going in the next few years. I'm trying to sort of think as to what's going to happen. I think we're going to see a lot more LARPs with a digital element, and we have those already. We, like I said, we had this LARP that people did over Facebook and Zoom, that people I knew with did during the pandemic. We still have a few LARPs like that going around. Someone said they were in a letter LARP. My LARP that was playing a letter LARP, which I think they're playing a letter LARP, which is really interesting. I think we're going to see more digital elements though. So, like Orion Sphere with this ship simulation, but also Beakerline has an online element to it as well. I think they have a war game aspect that's done online in between events. I think we're going to be seeing more of those, especially for large festival systems that people will play semi regularly, um, like Empire, possibly Conquest of Mythodia, Glory and Trust, Curious Pastimes. I think we're eventually going to see a digital element in some of those games come to fruition because I think it's a puller into it's a great, puller to get people to come and sort of, interact with them more and gives possibly an income source that happens in between games. And I know it's like for subscription service, something like that. But I think we're going to see more digital elements of LARP to try and maintain immersion in between events, which could work incredibly well. Again, I'm not sure if that will result in the exclusion of people because not everybody can afford to play it in an online game in between events or necessarily wants to. I mean, some people like to disconnect from LARP the second that they've packed up their tent and gone home. I think that's something we're definitely going to see more of. Is just more people more games going into a digital element. I think we are going to see more games going in a more professional route as well. Just because it's becoming almost the best way to be a competitive game. Essentially, if every other game around you is offering, highly immersive experiences with costumes and monsters and, battle simulators and, you know, mass battles with smoke and drums and special effects, it almost feels like your game has to do all of that stuff to keep up. And so I think in general, we're going to see more and more games push toward that professional angle. I think we're going to see more games where the organizers take it up as, for a living as opposed to just being a hobby. I think we're going to see more and more people essentially getting wages off LARPs, which I think is a relatively probably a quite controversial opinion because I know that there's a large population out there who believe that we should not profit from LARP, that LARP is a hobby and it is a labor of love and it should stay that way. And I'll be honest with you, I think that is not going to happen. I think LARP is going to become more professional. I think we're going to see more companies take on LARPs. And I think we are going to start seeing people make a living off LARP. And that is going to result in some moderately to high expensive games. And like I said, I know that's a controversial opinion because some people really don't want it to be that way, but I really think that that's just how it's going to be because we're already in competition with companies like Disney. Um, which is which I think is really harsh. I think it's pretty harsh that Disney got in on the game of LARP and went, we can do it better. It's like, well, of course you can. You have billions of dollars at your fingertips. So, yeah, I think when we have companies like Disney or we have the team from Evermore Park, and I know Evermore Park is kind of a bit of a interesting talking point as well because it's not quite what was sold when it was originally advertised, but it still delivers a lot of things that people find interesting and immersive. So when we've got people holding those standards in the field, I think we're just going to see more professional companies develop from LARP. And I would love to see that actually be LARPers as opposed to big corporations coming in and just creating LARPs because they know they're profitable. Especially when they can almost cheat because they have a expensive IP, like Star Wars. Because I've been going on about how I wanted to do a Star Wars LARP for years, and then Disney made one, which was amazing, and I can't afford to do it because it's so expensive. Um, oh, that sounds so cool, Myla. That's that. Oh, now I'm just picturing working on it, so now I have to go back. I think Evermore was made by LARPers, but they kind of took it to like an nth level because they acquired all this land and built all this sort of, buildings and different areas that you can go through. And it's still not quite what was advertised. If you go online and watch some of the videos that people have written about it, apparently at the original con where it was proposed, and they had all these mock-ups, it involved like actual rides and was far more complex. And it was almost like Disneyland but on fantasy steroids. And it's just not quite been that. But still, the fact that they were able to acquire a large amount of land and construct what they did, that does kind of still put them heads and shoulders above the rest of us who are still trying to function on spaces that we have to essentially rent. A bit like Efteling, but not quite. Because I know Efteling. I don't know a lot about Efteling. I confess the most I know about Efteling is from Emma O'Brien's video, which is very informative, but I don't know much beyond that. I know it's a theme park. I know that there's an immersive experience part of it, hence Emma O'Brien's video. But kind of, Harry, it's a bit more complicated than that. Go look up there's a person I will put it in the chat later of someone I would recommend. That's all right, Harry. I know. Unfortunately, the closest thing I had to an immersive theme park here in the UK was a place called American Adventure, which was not far from where I lived. And American Adventure was interesting, and not quite immersive, but it did try to be and had some rather interesting rides and things. If anyone in the chats from the UK, do you remember American Adventure? Because if not, then you're way younger than I am. Yeah, Matt, I think companies do want to push the tech, but also keep the costs down. I think it's because we're in those early stages of people kind of combining the two. I don't think people know how to do both of those things yet. So I think we're going to see LARPs get more expensive as the technology improves, and then get cheaper as we work out how to do all the cool technology cheaply. Um, but it is going to, but I really do think it is going to shoot up before it comes back down again. And that's going to make life a bit trickier. Um, yeah, it's all very interesting thinking of where LARP's going to be in 5 years. Um, I think I said there was a chat I saw on not LARP Haven. I think it was on UK LARP events, a Facebook page, and someone was asking about what kind of LARPs do people want to see more of, and I think they were pushing towards more festival LARPs here in the UK, and that's one thing I don't think we're going to see more of here in the UK is festival LARPs. I think people are going to try it. I know people are trying it. I don't think they're going to take off because we have 3 festival LARPs all in direct competition with each other. And they all have their different selling points, but one is vastly bigger than the others because one of its selling points is the fact its players just love to sell it. Yes, Mike. Yes, Mike. That's where American Adventure was. I I grew up near Ilkeston, so yes, I'm very aware of it. Um, when I say festival LARPs, Harry, what I mean is essentially it's exactly what it sounds like, which doesn't help the description. So you think of like a music festival. I don't know what you have in the Netherlands. I'm very sorry, but if you think of like Glastonbury Festival or Reading Festival here in the UK, it's essentially a mass of people all camping and going off and doing a thing, which usually at UK music festivals is they go and listen to a band, but instead it's a LARP and it's not quite a Renaissance fair. It's not quite because Renaissance fairs as far is it Renaissance? I'm gonna say Renaissance. I feel like that's an Americanism, and I'm gonna get scolded by some English people in a minute. Um, the difference is Renaissance fairs are, you know, a day out that people can have, and you don't have to go in costume. It's fun, but you don't have to. Whereas a festival style LARP, everyone is expected to play. Um, the immersion levels is much higher, and because it's a LARP, there are rules in place. So if combat happens around you, you may end up in combat. You have to play a character. That character can die, and it's essentially like any other LARP, but done on a festival level scale. So, for instance, hi Lara. Empire LARP is the biggest one here in the UK. I think it had I want to say 3,000 players at its biggest event this year. I've got a feeling it was more. It was huge. Um, and every single one of them is in character. So we're all in costume and we've all got our own character. And yeah, 3,000 player crew. It was absolutely amazing. I've said it before, I'd never seen anything like it because the other festival LARPs I go to in the UK are set out differently because people fight all day long. Yep, Empire is a festival LARP, and that's just purely because of the scale. You'd like it, Milo. It was a really good time. And I lost my train of thought again. Nope, it's completely gone. I've just stuck because this is why I ramble about stuff. I just think we're going to see. That's what I was saying. I was talking about how I don't think any more festival LARPs are going to be possible. I think people have the market for festival LARPs is actually quite narrow here in the UK. Either people go to Empire, or they go to Curious Pastimes, or they go to the Lorraine Trust, or they go to a combination of them because people go to these LARPs for different things. I don't know if there's a gap in the market for another LARP, there might be if people pick a genre other than fantasy, but fantasy is a big thing when it comes to the LARP community. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. Going back to a comment, there was the one. The new Mike, yes, the new standards of kit immersion are getting close to historical reenactment. Yes, yes, they are. That's something I've noticed a lot lately. Is that standards are pretty high. I'm on the Bergschneider challenge right now. I've gone on about it a few times because I only talk about 3 things in my life, and the people in the Bergstein Challenge Facebook page have been incredibly lovely and incredibly supportive. But I've been really nervous about posting what I've been making up on there, because what I am making does not look very historical and really leans hard into the fantasy side of it. And I really was worried if I post it up there, people are going to not be impressed and tell me that it looks stupid. And I was wrong, because people in general are lovely. Um, but the standards of kit immersion are indeed getting up to level of historical reenactment, and that's another thing I think is going to start pricing people out if we hold people to such high kit standards, because people just simply won't be able to afford it. And we can all talk about going to charity shops and thrifting and, you know, sewing your own costumes to save cost. Some of us can't sew to save our lives, though. I can't. I can't. I can do little things, but I could never make my own costume. And even with stuff I thrifted part of my costume for Empire, thanks to the help of my lovely friend Debbie from Debbie LARPs on Twitter. Follow her; she's really, really, really funny and really, really helpful when it comes to LARP. And she took me thrifting because we live in the same city, and I learned a lot from her, and it was great. But even then, my costume still looks a bit shit. Not because of her; it's because I'm pathetic and I can't make costume for the love of me. Um, it's cost you how much? I'm sorry, Mike. I just hallucinated. I just hallucinated, and I could have sworn in the chat it said £15,000. Um, but that's not a real number. I say that, I know people have spent way more than £15,000 on LARP. I haven't, but that's because I'm broke. Um. Oh my god, £15,000. I can't afford to spend £15,000 on LARP. I wish I could. Um. This is why I sit and make videos about how you can make LARP kit on the cheap, and how you can you know, get a LARP kit that you can use at multiple events. Because some of us just don't have that money. LARP is going to get more expensive in general. We can't avoid that. That is the ultimate future of LARP, I think, is that LARP is going to get more expensive. And we can fight it as much as possible. And we should fight that as much as possible. I'm not gonna because people should not be priced out of LARP. This hobby needs new blood. It needs people who, get a joy out of life. And some of those people are always going to be low income. We're going to have students. We're going to have low income families. We're going to have people who just have generally a lot of expenses in life because they have houses and families. And, kids are a pricey thing, as it turns out. Just the way of the world. We shouldn't be pricing people out. But as LARP goes on, we are going to start seeing that more and more and more. And we all need to work out a way to mitigate that as much as possible. So if anyone has any ideas, start giving them to your LARPs, because we want people to play. Sorry, for those of you who are wondering why I'm drinking a lot, it's because I have a cold and I need to keep my throat from like coughing me into oblivion. Um, yeah. But hey, onwards and upwards. We're not out. We're not, into the great deep pit of no one can afford to LARP just yet. I'm off to LARPCon on the 2nd of March. So if any of you in the UK and planning on being at LARPCon on Saturday the 2nd, is it Saturday? No, it's not the 2nd. 4th. I'm away for work on the 2nd. That's why the date's in my head. Yeah, so Saturday 4th of March is part of LARPCon. LARPCon stretches from Friday the 3rd to Sunday the 5th. I will be there on the 4th, however, because I'm planning on talking to a bunch of different LARPs while I'm there. I want to meet some of the games that are currently in the UK. I'm going to be talking to some of the game makers about their games and what their games are like. But I'm also going to be talking to them about a few other topics that I've wanted to make videos on. One big one I want to make a video on, and I'm hoping to make a rather large video about it and involve a bunch of other people, because I think it's a discussion that other people have had. I've not had this discussion yet, which is about neurodiversity in LARP and how we should help people and what should be the priority. Hi, Pumpkin. I want to talk about about neurodiversity in LARP, the expansion of the neurodiverse community, and what should be the standard for LARPs when approaching neurodiversities. It's something very close to my heart. I'm neurodiverse. My husband's neurodiverse. My son is neurodiverse. I have many friends who are neurodiverse. We have a growing community of people with autism, ADHD, OCD, and various other neurodiversities. And I want to have that discussion. I want to discuss with people who are neurodiverse. I want to discuss with game makers about how people think neurodiversity should be being approached as we move into the future. And there's a few other topics that I want to discuss with them as well, but I'm not going to go into all of them because then I'll just tell you what all my upcoming videos are. Yeah, so if anyone's in the UK and are planning on going to LARPCon or just thinking about going to LARPCon, I will be there on the Saturday, hopefully with a bunch of other creators as well, because I've been connecting with a lot of them lately. I've been listening to LARPs and Tarps podcast quite a lot. I'm actually recently got interviewed for the To Have and To Roll podcast with they are a lovely, lovely pair as well, who I would absolutely recommend. Oliver and Robin are two new content creators in the space. They are absolutely fantastic. And I've got a video coming up. They've got a video coming up where they talk to me and about, my experiences with LARP and what it's like to be a content creator for LARP and how this has all been trying to, promote this hobby in a space where it's not easy to promote LARP, because we talk about is how hard it is to get footage of LARP. But something I'm trying to, yeah, Mike, Oliver and Robin are the best. They are so nice. So when that video goes up, I'm going to put that I'm going to put that in my collaborative playlist, and I'm going to pop that on all my social media as well. So keep an eye out for that because they are absolutely lovely, and I had a lovely time on their podcast. Yeah. What else going on? Yeah, so I'm going to LARPCon. I'm to see them. I'm praying I get to finally meet Abby from Abby Pop. Hopefully the guys from LARPs and Tarps podcast, and maybe a few other people as well. And we can actually, fingers crossed, um, to have some fun and come up with some interesting collaborative stuff as LARP goes forward. Because I want to make friends because I'm sad and alone. No, I'm not really. I hope. Yeah, so I think we're almost coming to a close, to be honest. I'm sorry for people who've come in a bit later. I'm actually one thing I do want to do is one of these live chats. I'm going to see if I can have a guest because there's a couple of people I kind of want to chat with on my live streams about LARP in general. So I might be grabbing a friend or two at some point soon. So if there's anything you guys want to particularly talk about, let me know because I have friends of all walks of life, and it is quite interesting to hear them all. But my next live stream is going to be on the 10th of March because one, it's 4 weeks from now, and two, it's the Friday immediately after LARPCon. So I'm going to want to talk a lot about it. At LARPCon, I'm planning to release a bunch of shorts because I will be taking videos throughout the day as well, taking my videos with everybody else. And fingers crossed, it's going to be a really, really fun day. So I'm going to end this here because I think I have rambled on long enough. It's been really nice to see so many people. I'm so sorry that the live stream went a bit wrong at the start. Like I said, my internet is being changed in 4 days. 4 days. It's literally my Valentine's Day present for myself and for my husband is we're getting new internet, which doesn't sound romantic, but when you've had terrible internet for quite a while, trust me, it's the most romantic thing you could possibly have. I want this more than I want flowers, more than I want chocolate, more than I want pretty much anything else that you would get for Valentine's Day. So new internet is going to be my Valentine's Day present. So yeah, 10th of March, we will have better internet, which means a better live stream. And I will have fun at the con. Pumpkin, thank you so much. I will be posting videos up over the course of the day. Thank you very much who's tuned in. I really appreciate you guys all sticking with me. Have I ever considered doing a challenge for my personal YouTube community? Oh, I haven't, but that's an idea. Leave that with me, Michaela, because you've just given me a bunch of interesting ideas. So I have to go. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for giving me your time. You have all been brilliant. I will look at doing some challenges for you because that does sound great. Have a good day / evening wherever you are in the world. And as I love to always cheesily say, I'll see you on a battlefield soon. Bye.